r/AskReddit. Posted by user Human Optimist. Serious, what's the most paranormal thing that's ever happened to you? From pretty much the first night after my dad died, I started seeing him in my dreams. I didn't think anything of it at first, because I figured that's a perfectly reasonable subconscious response to losing a loved one. The weird thing though, was that he looked seriously real. Everything else in my dream would have that strange, cartoonish vibe to it, yet I could look at my dad and count the individual hairs in his mustache and on his head. In one of the dreams, I became lucid and realized I was asleep. I asked my dad point blank, "Are you visiting me or is this just a figment of my imagination? I need to know." He smiled, hugged me and said, "I'm here with you right now, son, and I always will be. I love you." I woke up suddenly and as I did, I saw a very light shadow. Had it not moved, I wouldn't have seen it. It was a head and shoulders, leaning through the doorway and into my room. As soon as I saw it, it quickly moved away and backed out of my room. Somehow it was calming rather than scary. I was absolutely amazed, because that's exactly what my dad used to do when I was little, and he left really early for work. He'd pop his head in and say goodbye. The way this shadow moved was exactly the same. I'm convinced it was him checking in on me. If that wasn't strange enough, my mom called me downstairs that same morning. She tells me to go into the living room and look at the floor. I go in and guess what? Dad's reading glasses have somehow ended up slap bang in the middle of the room. That 110% confirmed it for me. Crazy demon tree story. Let me preface this by saying I am one of the most skeptical people you'll ever meet. I'm not religious, I don't believe in ghosts or aliens, in the come to earth / abduction / etc. sense. There's probably a good chance there's life out there somewhere in the vastness of space, or any of that. This is the weirdest thing I've ever encountered and I have no real logical explanation for it. No drugs or booze were involved. My friends and I went camping up in the White Mountains of NH most summers, in middle and high school, and a few years after till life happened and we all went our ways. Now being a bunch of unorganized teen boys / men children, we always took forever to get in gear and actually get going, usually not leaving southern MA, where we lived until late afternoon, early evening. One year we got up there about 10 p.m. or so, and decided rather than hike into the woods we just sort of camp / crash out in the parking lot and hike in the AM. After a bit of unwinding and some food everyone went to bed except for me and one other dude. We ended up wandering over to a small wooden footbridge over a river. Was a perfectly clear night filled with stars and a fairly bright moon, and we were shooting the breeze for a good couple hours about all sorts of stuff, movies, games, life, etc., etc. Had to be well after midnight by this point. As we were chatting we both got this creepy feeling of something being there and it was sinister. Looking at the far end of the bridge there was this massive, dead tree, no leaves, just clawing branches, silhouetted against the sky. We both were like, man, I swear that tree is creeping me out, but that's silly, right? At first we tried to dismiss it as silly, but both of us kept feeling more and more unnerved, until I finally was like, screw this, I'm a grown man, I'm not afraid of a damn tree, I'ma walk over there. I get like 2/3 of the way across the bridge and it feels like something reached in and grabbed my pounding heart. Just went totally ice cold. I backed up and was like, yeah, I'm afraid of a tree. I seriously think I'm not coming back if I go over there. We retreated from the bridge and decided to go to bed back in the sleeping bags by the car. Next morning, after breakfast, we decide to hike into the trail by going across that bridge. Halfway across, my friend freezes. Dude. I look across the bridge. It's a clearing. There's no trees there. My husband and I were having dinner at a very small restaurant in the basement of a 16th century Amsterdam canal house, and there was a single lit candle on the table. In the middle of eating, the candlestick and its base flies off our table onto the floor, as if someone had knocked it very hard with their hand. The waitress turns around and asks if we did that, and we say no. We all get very creeped out and nervously laugh. Food was great, though. Alright, so I know this is the internet, but you'll just have to trust me on this having actually happened to me, and please bear with this slightly lengthy recollection. My extremely Catholic grandmother owned a house in rural New York. We'd often go there when we went to camp or for family holidays. The place always had a weird vibe to it, as it was over 150 years old. I had several paranormal experiences like seeing what I believed to be a spirit of a man in a brown coat and top hat in the kitchen, or hearing children's voices in the bunk bedroom when nobody was home, as well as light fixtures acting strangely, light bulbs going out on holiday lights one by one in sequence, instead of all at once. Anyways, these experiences were never emotion-inducing or threatening, just weird things I was convinced I saw. Until one day when I was about 10. I was there alone while my grandmother went shopping, and was just watching Avatar: The Last Airbender and playing with Legos, pretty standard. I went to the bathroom at one point and noticed the door to the basement. I never thought anything of the basement because it was always closed and off limits, but being unsupervised and the bold kid I was, I opened the door to get a peek. It was pitch black down the stairs, but within about 3 seconds, I felt an intense chill and an absolutely terrifying feeling of pure evil wash over me, like a primal fear. Every instinct in my being and soul went into full panic mode, as I felt the presence rapidly approaching up the stairs. I shut the door and locked it as fast as I could and ran to the common room and grabbed a cross, convinced it was some sort of demon. Upon telling my grandmother this, her face went white, as if she wasn't as shocked as afraid, and as if she knew something about it. She called a priest into the house and had him bless the place. When he opened the door to the basement, he stopped abruptly, and slowly descended. He performed his blessing down there, and confided in us that he had felt the same feeling of dread, but that the house was protected by the Lord now and we had nothing to fear. I was always wary after that, but never experienced it again, and certainly never went near the basement. As I grew up, it weighed less on me, and I thought that maybe I was just a kid who spooked himself. Maybe I had a grandmother who was so religious that she thought a non-existent demon was present, and maybe the priest felt what we were telling him we had felt, and it wasn't real. Unfortunately for that theory, and the reason I share this, is because I learned a few years ago, that the family that had moved into the house, after my grandparents moved to Florida, had abruptly moved out. They had forfeited their down payment and left immediately because, and I quote from the realtor's report, the demons in the basement were terrorizing their children to an unbearable degree. So I don't know what was down there, but it wasn't human, it wasn't benevolent, and it wasn't make-believe. So about 6 months after I bought our house, I started noticing something odd. Every once in a while, I would catch sight of something out of the corner of my eye, and always assume it was my cat since it was the same size, shape, and moved like a cat. However, I would realize a few seconds later that my cat was in the yard or another room. I would try to look back, but nothing was ever there. It was so quick I always dismissed it. Once, at night, I saw it on the ceiling and I about had a heart attack. I also would hear things in the house. I thought my husband was doing the dishes due to the clinking in the sink, but then I would realize he was in the bedroom and the kitchen was empty. It took about a year for my husband and I to start wondering aloud if we were actually seeing things or if something was up. Turns out he was seeing stuff too, just little flashes here and there. My husband said he heard some stuff too on his days off when no one was home. The biggest moment was when I woke up in the middle of the night and saw my cat curled up on my side table. I heard him purring. His fur looked darker and his purr was lower, but I was half asleep and didn't notice. I went to the bathroom and on my way I passed my cat sleeping in the hallway. It actually took me a few seconds, but I literally felt my chest turn cold. I went back into my bedroom and saw that the bedside table was empty. We're pretty sure we got a cat ghost in our house. The only thing I know about the previous owner was that he was put into a mental hospital. I have had to route a bunch of paperwork back to him over the years because his affairs were very clearly not taken care of when he was hospitalized. My theory is that he had a cat that got lost in the shuffle and it's waiting for him to come back. I got a story about my cat. I got my tuxedo cat, Squeals, when I was around 13 and he lived for 5 years. I remember the day my mom told me he went missing. I was always mad at her for letting him out. We lived in an apartment beside a busy street, and she would always give me that bullshit excuse, he needs to be outside so he doesn't feel like he's in jail. If you want your cat to live a long life, don't let him outside. Anyways, the day Squeals went missing, I went looking for him for a few hours around my neighborhood, yelling out his name. I didn't find him. So that night I said a prayer, while I was crying my eyes out, Squeals, please, if you're on the other side, I need you to come visit me tonight. So I can stop worrying, please. That night I had the most beautiful dream that I can still remember to this day. I was in my bed in the morning and my room was surrounded in this most beautiful light blue light, and Squeals jumped up into my bed one last time, and I swear I could hear his purring. I woke up and I knew at that moment my little tuxedo kitty was waiting for me in the clouds. For a while too, when I lived in that apartment, I could see a little dark shadow, about the size of a cat, moving in the corner of my eye. I wouldn't feel scared at all, I just knew that was Squeals stopping by for a visit. I love you, kitty, and I'll see you again one day. My eyes are leaking? Gonna go pet my kitties. I don't really believe in the paranormal. I think there was probably an explanation, but I was too young to know what it was. All the same, I'm going to tell the story like I remember it. My room wasn't very large. A typical square room, mostly taken up by a dresser, bookshelf/TV stand combo and my twin-sized bed. The bed bisected the room, separating the entrance door from the sliding door closet. As I was young and I liked having the fan on, I had one of those long extendo chains for the light so I could turn off my light and still enjoy the fan at nights. I was in my room, messing around, not long before bed. I have always been an active person, and in my childhood, I was never anywhere in the house without a trusty toy sword or toy sword stand-in close at hand, and tonight was no exception. I don't remember why I swung, because again, small room, but I swung my sword and it struck the long chain for the light. Anyone who has ever accidentally whacked their chain knows what happens next. The chain goes flying into the air, wraps itself endlessly around the light fixture and turns off the light. In an instant, I was plunged into darkness. Annoyed, I clambered onto my bed and began to tentatively reach up. I didn't want to stick my hand in the fan blade, but I needed to reach really close to it to begin untangling the chain. I froze when I heard a shuffling sound, and the groan. It sounded close by, in my room with me. It sounded like the closet door sliding open on its old track. I kept trying to reach up, but now the hair on my arms was standing on end. The groan of the door finally stopped, but what replaced it was a heavy, throaty breathing. I imagined it, of course. I had to have, because what little boy doesn't have an overactive imagination? All the same, I was terrified. I gave up trying to untangle the light chain and instead reached for the top of it, where the chain fed directly into the light fixture. The breathing was closer now, and my brain was happy to provide the louder sounds and the horrifying image of everything they belonged to, creeping towards my bed. I found the chain and I pulled. I know I pulled. I heard the click, but perhaps I just wanted to, because light did not flood the room and banish away the darkness of my fears. I pulled again, and again. Surely the chain was too tightly wound to activate the light. Surely that was it. I could not wait to find out. I dove off my bed and lunged for the door to my bedroom, flinging it open and allowing light from the hallway to spill into the room. I whirled around, toy sword still in hand, but there was nothing there. The gloom of my bedroom stared back at me. Bed, dresser, bookcase with my TV and Xbox perched on top of it. No monsters. I re-entered my room and climbed on the bed once again. I reached up and, with the aid of the hall light, pulled firmly on the base of the light string. With a loud click, the light turned on, and my bedroom returned to normal. I unwound the light chain from the light fixture and climbed off the bed, sunspots dancing in my eyes from looking at the light, and feeling a little woozy from the past few minutes. But it was okay. It was all my imagination. There was no monster. The light wasn't turning on because I was pulling it wrong. I could explain everything, very easily. Except for why my closet door was open. When I was younger, about 6th grade, and moving to a new city, my mother and I were looking at new houses. After a long day of going house to house, we found one that my mom and I instantly fell in love with. When it was time to go into one of the last rooms, we all walked in, and I remember walking into this small pale blue room and getting this weird feeling throughout my body, and had to run outside and throw up. My mom and realtor followed, and that's when she asked how we knew what happened, and then my mom confused said, "Knew what?" And then she told my mom that someone had just recently died in that room. I still have dreams about that room. That's so creepy.